there. Welcome to Sonic Talk, episode 591. Recording today, live, Wednesday, the 2nd of October. Gosh, there it went. And so went the summer of 2019. Yes, we didn't have a show last week. That's because I was in Japan, in Tokyo, Hamamatsu as well, on the Yamaha trip, which I'm perfectly happy to tell you all about. But in the meantime, I suppose I should rewind and tell you, if you're a first-time viewer to this is a podcast, Sonic Talk. We talk about music technology, we talk about software, we talk about the sort of commerce of making music and creating music, touring, controllerism, all that kind of stuff, electronic music, any kind you like, really. And that's what we'll be discussing for about the next hour. I want to say thank you very much to our show sponsors who will be providing a prize. You could win a copy of iZotope Neutron 3 Advanced, I should add, which is a very advanced mixing plugin which allows you to analyze the program material, intercommunication between channels, figure out where the holes are in the frequencies or the clashes. Very clever stuff. We'll bring a bit more about that later. I want to say hello to our guests. I think we're going to start over here. We got Mr. Matthew Hodson, the Maths. Who we haven't had for ages. You've been, well, I guess you've been on holiday, starting a new term at BIMS because you're a course director, a lecturer. I'm not quite sure what your full title is there. It's probably changed since last time we spoke. It's been so long. Music producer, of course, performer as well. How are you?
I'm exhausted, actually. The only thing that I haven't done out of that list you just mentioned there is go on holiday. But I am going to New York in a couple of weeks, actually, to the Audio Engineering Society conference, which I'm looking forward to.
Nice.
Just getting out there. I don't know if anyone's ever been to that one, but if you can, it's such a great one to go to. I've been really well. I've been moving studio, actually, so that's why I'm sat here, not surrounded by synthesizers for once. Everything's in boxes at the moment. But I'm moving into a great little studio space. I'm just setting that up. Just kicked off the start of term at BIM, which is great. Some new students have just come in. So it's just been great to meet all of those. Kicked off teaching, writing and recording, just getting the new EP finished as well and that kind of thing. So absolutely exhausted, but
full on. Well, that sounds great, actually. I mean, because I know now, correct me if I'm wrong, but didn't you actually move studios not that long before you then moved house? Because I remember you saying you had changed the setup. So is this a kind of, was it like a dry run? Now this is the real deal, right?
I guess it was. Completely changed my setup again. I went old school and I bought an old Mackie 32.8 desk and went down that route for all of the I/O that I wanted, and decided to go the other way now, and completely kind of almost gone in the box and just using the sound card just literally just to record through now. So I've gone away with the desk is gone now, and it's just straight A to D recording straight into the computer, basically. That's how I'm working at the minute. Direct.
Well, lovely to have you, Matt. People can find your stuff if you just look for Maths. That's the best thing to do, at Maths. No, maths, isn't it? Not maths. And we also have Mr. Yoad Nevo, who's there in Nevo Sound in London, where you can see the extent, or certainly, most of the keyboards. There's a lot of other synthesizers on the other wall, as I know, because we went to visit him in his production studio, fantastic Neve-equipped studio, and where he does all of the production. And I haven't said this to your face, but your mixes sounded really, really good, I have to say. I was kind of thinking, ooh, yeah, because often when you hear mixes, it's all nice and you can go, but it doesn't. Sometimes it has a certain something, and that's what I heard with yours. So, if you need if you can afford him, that is, you need a mixer. He's the guy. So Yoad, also Wave developer. How are you? Are you well?
Yeah, I'm very well, thanks. Good to be here again after 2 weeks.
Yeah, well, it feels like longer, actually, just because I suppose so much has happened for us. I mean, because we've travelled, I don't know how many thousands of miles it is. I must admit, I did feel a little bit guilty because as we were travelling, it was the whole time that Greta Thunberg was doing her thing, and I was just thinking, I'm really not. I'm not sticking to the plot here, am I? Anyway, but I'll make up for it in another way. We're doing this remote, so there's very little kind of challenging travelling involved. But Yoad, lovely to have you, and we'll get on some topics in a minute. We also have Mr. Gaz Williams, who's there in Bristol, and his bass studio, his production studio in the attic. Of course, bass player, producer, all those things, music technologist. How are you, Gaz?
Yeah, really good, thank you. I've just had a little trip out as well, because you couldn't make it because you were in Japan. So I've been out to Vienna, which was just a flying visit. So sorry to my Viennese friends there, because I didn't get any time. Literally had no time other than just this quick in and out there. And that was to visit Lewitt Microphones, who are Austrian microphone company, and they've got some incredible mics. And the purpose of the trip was to partly to celebrate the upcoming 10th anniversary of Lewitt, and also to see some upcoming things, which I can't talk about just yet, but they've got some really interesting microphones, and I was really impressed by the whole setup there. Really, they've got it's a very young company, and
10 years.
Well, no, but I mean the people actually.
Oh, I see. They started it when they were 15. You mean?
Well, something like that by looks of them. But just a great atmosphere, and people clearly very passionate to work there. And I think Lewitt microphones are well worth looking at if you are in the microphone market, just because they have. Their kind of stance, I think, is that that they don't believe that, like, say, vintage microphones are inherently better than what you can make today. So they kind of think that you can make better microphones using modern production techniques.
Well, it stands to reason, I guess. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think that kind of informs their sort of design. I mean, one of their ones, which I was really keen to check out, is that I think it's the 640. I'm not quite sure what the initials are, but that one's like, I think we've talked about that before. Really, it's got it's like a regular, it's a dual diaphragm condenser. But what's really cool is that you can plug a mini XLR into the side, and then record it into a stereo track in your DAW.
Oh, that's right, and then change it up afterwards. Yeah.
Yeah, you insert this little plug-in in, and you can then change the polar pattern after you've recorded, which I think is such a brilliant idea, especially when you're recording. I was thinking of an example of that, maybe like if you're recording a guitarist, singing acoustic guitarist or whatever, and mic up the guitar, and then after you've recorded it, you can choose which polar pattern is best, that has the most rejection maybe of the vocal into. There's many reasons, but you can automate this plugin as well. So you can actually an example they suggested is you could have like a lead vocal which in the verse is like a kind of like a tight sort of hypercardioid, and then it goes more into like an omni during the chorus.
All right, you bring in some of the early to bring some of the room in.
Yeah,
interesting idea.
So but and lots of their things have got these kind of innovative ideas, really. And I had a fantastic time. So if anyone from Lewitt's listening, thanks. I appreciate it.
Yeah, it's funny in the chat room, which is very much going to be like this, because I mean, obviously, yes, fly me out to Austria and I'll give your company a plug. but that's fair enough. But I mean, also fly us out to Japan, and we were in Hamamatsu at the kind of mothership of where Yamaha is, and the thing that I've not been there before. I've never been to one of the really big guys. And I'll just mention this briefly, because when we went to there's this Innovation Road, and the whole thing was sort of designed around celebrating 45 years of synths. And they had a lovely little team of artists, a streaming team from Germany and the European. And we just they just used their facility, and we just hung about and shot some content while we were there. Very, very pleased to be there. 45 years of making synths and all that business. But seeing the facility, we've got all these other videos that we're going to bring out over the time. We did a tour of this Innovation Road, which is like a history of Yamaha. And it's just like the organ that Mr. Yamaha made in 1887. That's when it all started. I mean, and then you go through and there's all these kind of pictures of the workshops of people beating kind of trumpet horns. And, it's very much a kind of a skills and craft based company. It's not like they sort of stamp them out in massive factories, although I'm sure there's a certain amount of that. But it's interesting to see the stuff that goes on behind, so we often sort of have these preconceived ideas of companies, and you just think, oh, it's just this or it's just that. But it's very interesting to see behind the scenes. And we had a lovely time. Some of the finest sushi I've ever eaten in my life. Sadly, no, there wasn't a brand new synthesizer. I wonder whether there was going to be, but it wasn't ready. I mean, I've not heard anything along these lines. But we did get. the montage and the Modi X OSs, which, you know, if you're into that stuff, does bring a lot of extra stuff in there. So
did you get to eat the sea anemone when you were there?
No, I didn't eat CNS. The most ambitious thing I ate was a really good sashimi, tuna sashimi, which is the finest thing I've ever eaten, I think, quite possibly. It was great fun, and it's a very interesting, because we were there at the same time as the Rugby World Cup. So we flew over with a whole bunch of rugby fans, Irish rugby fans, and then, you know, as each day progressed, there were sort of fans of differing nationalities showing up. There were a load of South African guys staying at our hotel, you know. So it's an amazing city. And we went to 5G, which I've posted. We also met Tori Letzler, who I've posted an interview with, and we've got some more stuff. She did a Friday Fun thing. I tell you what, one of the really big, before I get on to actual topics, one of the really big deals was, we thought we were going to get the plan was to do a few Friday Funs. You know, there'd be a room and we could bring a couple of Yamaha synths together and we could kind of grab anything. As it turned out, when we got there, all the really nice stuff was kind of locked down in this exhibitor set, so we didn't get any access to that. So all we had were refaces. And, you know, which was a bit disappointing, but then actually playing with them, they were really good. And everybody was just gravitating to this room and jamming with the CPs. And one thing that came out of this is, I know when they were first announced, you know, they were considered a bit of a letdown because everybody's expecting an analog thing. But actually now they tell us that they can't make them fast enough. People are just really, they've really kind of blossomed. And they are good fun.
You've seen them out. You've seen them on stages. Like I mentioned at Seeing Stereo Lab, they had a couple on stage.
Oh, right. It makes sense. Yeah, makes sense.
Yeah.
And we got to interview or speak to Guy Yuji, who was the engineer there. We also spoke to Toshi who is the guy who did the physical modelling and also invented all this VCM technology, the virtual circuit model. I mean, the real brains the size of planets. So very interesting time. Anyway. That's enough of that. Let's get on to a bit of a topic. I mean, this is kind of awesome. This dropped probably a couple of days or just where we're at. This is the news of the Analogue Solutions Colussus, which on the face of it essentially looks like an EMS Synthi 100. It is absolutely massive, although they do say they've made it's inspired by, and they've made sure it's the right size to fit through most doorways, which is a very smart move because we're constantly hearing about people who've got them and can't get them in and out of their buildings, or not constantly, but we do have stories of that. So yeah, this is this 12 VCOs and the pin boards. And yeah, it's going to be, I mean, they reckon it's going to be about 25 grand. You know, it's an expensive synth, but nowhere near as expensive as an actual Synthi 100, which, although he says it's inspired by, it isn't. It's, you know, uses a lot of the technology that Analogue, and it's a bodacious move. I mean, I just can't believe that someone would actually do that. I mean, it's astonishing. I mean, yeah, I'm just a bit flabbergasted. I know, Yoad, are you starting to clear some space for one of these? This would make a beautiful centerpiece, even if you never turn it on.
I know. You know, I was thinking about the price tag, 25 grand. So if you were a cab driver, then you would spend that much on your car because you would make your livelihood out of that.
At least.
At least. And if you're making music, you would... You know, there's no reason why you wouldn't spend that much if this is how you make your living. I'm just wondering whether, I mean, obviously I would love to have one, but I'm just wondering whether something like this actually can generate enough income just for the fact of having one. Can generate enough income to justify itself, or is it purely for hobbyists? You know.
I see what you mean. And so, actually, for the buyer rather than the seller, right?
Or just for people who, you know, I love synths and I have way more than I need and than I use, and it's like my hobby. I collect them and I like them, and I get grief when they're not working, and there's always like one or two who have some faults in them and stuff like that. But I find myself more and more using plugins and just getting on with the show. And right. And you know, obviously analog synths sound better. We talked briefly about the Hydra synth, which is quite an exception. There's another one I have, which is the World of Microwave XT, which, you know, albeit digital and all, it just sounds awesome. There's something about it which sounds great, but you know, that's kind of, these are there are a few exceptions, but as a rule, analog synths do sound bigger and lusher and deeper and everything, and you just, you know, but at the end of the day, when you work on productions and you're making beats and you want to get on with stuff, you just have amazing plugins and you can just do stuff with them quickly, and they sound great and they clean and they're in tune and they don't break and things like that.
All of these things are right. You are speaking wise words. But nonetheless, there's something. I mean, in some ways, you know, the Matrix Brute is a muscle synth. You know, it's not necessarily. It's big. It's a statement. I mean, it's probably aside from, I'm trying to think if there's anything else currently on the market that has that sort of largesse. I suppose the Schmidt, but that's a completely different ballgame. I mean, that's at the same sort of price. I know, Matt. You going to be pushing for BIMs to budget one of these in the electronic music laboratory?
Well, from an educational standpoint, I think this would be something great to put in front of students in terms of, well, it's just a completely different headspace for making music using something like this.
Well, you could get three of them around it at the time. You could teach 3 students at the same time. Yeah, whole class around it. There we go. Sold.
I could even have a little. I could even get underneath it and just sort of get out the way or something. But I've actually just moved house, and actually I've got a little bit of money left over from my deposit, and for the first time in my life, I could actually probably afford one of these. And this is sort of thing I'd write off immediately, but the way that I've been going, and I suppose it's just different for me because I don't run a commercial studio. I'm working less and less with clients now, and I'm just making my own music as a producer. And I mean, I'm still doing remixes and what have you. But having something like this sat in front of my new living room and really appeals to me. Just again for that headspace in terms of, imagine they're sitting there in the evening, plugging this thing in, and just creating with it and recording whatever comes out, and then unpatching it and saying that's it, and then just taking that approach to music production and away from the computer, away from the micro editing and all the DAW kind of stuff. Really, I just think it'd be so great to do. And I suppose if I looked at all my equipment in my studio, if I sold all my synths and my modulars and desks and what have you, and just kept the essentials, soon adds up to quite a few £1,000s. So you can get some way towards it if you start looking actually how much stuff you actually own already.
Yeah, I know, absolutely. I mean, it does. I suppose this is just the one hit. Do it all in one. Yeah. Do it in one. Gaz, I don't think it would quite fit in your space, but, well, you'd never get it up the stairs, would you? But
oh, I'd find a way. I got my Hammond up here. What I was going to say, I mean, Tom Carpenter, he said to me, I've got something big coming along, so with a bit of a wink. And I'm thinking, okay.
Literally.
I wasn't expecting it. Wow. I mean, what do we know about it? I mean, how can we read the panel on that? I mean, is it the sort of
well, it's essentially it's an homage. It doesn't use there are sort of obviously the pin boards that I think one's a CV pin board and one's an analog pin board, and then
that's like
you've
a mixer
got
on the
12
right
oscillators.
Yeah,
12 oscillators. I think I did. I can't remember. I mean, lots basically. There's a bunch of stuff. I'm just trying to think where it was. There's a spec here somewhere, isn't there? 2 spring reverbs.
Yeah, sequencers in there.
Sequencers.
The only thing that I'd have in addition to this is a drum machine sat right in where that blank panel is. I'd probably just have something like a Tempest or something really cool, like some sort of machine.
That center section is just gagging to be to have a MIDI controller put into it.
A Behringer.
Colossus, what a perfect name for it, though.
Yeah, it's quite a cheeky thing. I mean, I think it makes sense because I mean, you got to bear in mind that Moog made those System 100. The System. What were they? The really big one. The System 5, System 7. I can't even remember what it was called now, but it was 55. The full 55. The 55. That was I don't know 50 or 100 grand. I mean, it was really expensive. And it's a big, and lots of people bought those not necessarily for everyday use, but as an investment or because they're collect. I mean, in the same way that people buy beautiful vintage guitars, it's just a nice thing to have. And so maybe he saw that and thought, you know what? Maybe if I build something like this, I mean, because it's going to be a limited edition. I think they're going to make 20 or something. Did he say?
Right.
I'm trying to see. So it's not, but I mean, 20 at 25 grand is a decent revenue. Have you? I mean, if it could be built quick enough, I suppose that's the thing. It's like it's a lot of work, but it's just I just think it's a brilliant. Go for it.
I think that from a marketing perspective, that's a great move because, even if they don't make the money back, the investment back, it puts them in a different league in terms of a synth manufacturer. So it's not just Eurorack stuff. So okay, we now in the kind of Moog, synthesizer.com sort of thing, in the same league, and that's quite a clever move. I think either way, whatever happens with it, and I wish them all the success.
Absolutely, and all analog, so no firmware issues to deal with, which is a big thumbs up because that's the one that seems to get everybody with lots of analog. The firmware
that's probably the only piece of kit that will work with the new Apple OS.
Nicely slid in there, Johan. I like that one. Right, let's. We've got a couple of messages. We've also got some of our friends over at Softube. So, Softube, of course, have the new Monoment bass, which is a bass instrument designed purely for bass. Some really interesting synths have been sampled and wavetabled, multi-sampled. Designed at the kind of lower range, but all heavily processed in terms of to make them fat. So a lot of the sounds that come out are very mix ready. There's some very interesting and unique processing, multi-band compression, sort of interesting bits of grit and noise and sort of analogification, if that's a word. Lots of different presets. I did a review of it actually, and it sounded really nice. It's got a lot of, like I say, sort of mix ready bass. I mean, what else can I say? I think it's about $99. Modern bass, mix ready bass. If you want to check it out, head over to softube.com, and they periodically have sales on it. I'm not sure if it's on offer at the moment, but do check it out if you're looking for something that's just going to slot right in, fill up the lower end of your situation. Right. So what's next? Oh yeah, let's have a look at this. This is another Dreadbox moment. So we like Dreadbox. This is a new DIY kit called Antiphon. Comes with a spring tank. And it's an 8 sine wave oscillator bank with individual pitch and level control for each of them. Oscillators 7 and 8 can be pitched into low frequency mode to create LFOs. There's also, I think it's got distortion and a high pass and low pass filter. And you can just tune up this sort of massive bank of sine waves. And I believe you can CV a lot of these things as well, so that you can... Interesting, that looks like Yanis there. Just a great idea, and it's €165, comes in a kit. In fact, we got sent a couple because I have the Nix for review as well. So
salivation.
Yeah, this thing, I'll tell you what, this thing sounds great, but we're not talking about that. We're talking about Antiphon, which is an interesting... I'll come to you, Matt, first, because I know you're a big fan of modular stuff, and this is quite a unique... I mean, they seem to do this very well, don't they? Make things that are just sort of unique and aren't trying to be the same as everything else. They fill their own sort of niche.
Yeah, absolutely. I love everything that these people are putting out. Really inspiring, and I can't wait to see the one that you've got there as well. And this actually doesn't look too hard to put together because it comes as a kit, doesn't it? So you can build it yourself. I don't know if
there
they're
is soldering involved.
Bit of soldering involved, and I don't know how much I've done a lot of soldering and built studios and patch bays in my life, and I don't know how good my soldering skills are these days. I think I'd rather someone else build them for me these days. But for the price, if you can do it and you want to take your time, this is absolutely fantastic for the price and the functionality on it. I was wondering, so you've got these sine waves, you've got these 8 sine waves that you've got individual pitch control, VCAs on them, and volume control. I wasn't sure if they do they FM each other in any way or any cross modulation?
I think you can patch the output of one into others, okay. So you can. So, there isn't the thing that I'm seeing here. I don't see that there's an actual VCA per one. There's a knob for each one. I don't know whether it's possible. Right. I mean, if there's a knob there, presumably there would be the potential to patch or to create a CV control for that. You know, a bit of hacking, a bit of modding. So that's quite possible. Filters aren't resonant, but what was that, Matt? Oh, we just froze. We'll hold that thought. And we'll come to you, Gaz. Yeah, he was making a... Oh, no, he's back. Yeah. He came back. Sorry, we lost you there for a second, Matt. Yeah, hello, you just froze.
Oh, yeah. Sorry, yeah, I was just saying, I think what we heard in the video there, that distortion was the gain on the reverb, which is quite interesting.
Yeah.
I don't think it's a separate distortion module. It's more of the distortion applied to the input of the reverb, which is going to give you a really interesting characteristic as opposed to just slapping a... distortion on the end of the main output or whatever. Definitely. So I like the sound of that, definitely. And you've got filter, high pass and low pass on there. I'd love to know if they are pre or post the reverb as well, again, because you're just going to get different sounds depending where you put your filters before your reverbs and that kind of thing as well. So I like this.
I don't have that information. Great. Does look interesting though, definitely.
Looks really great.
I know you guys, I mean, we're both big fans of Dreadbox. I mean, we love since the Erebus Mark II. Have you got a Mark II or a Mark I? I can't remember.
I got a Mark II. I've got and
which was the
Abyss,
and the Mark III. Yeah, and the
Abyss. But also, I mean, the other big news, though, I mean, is that range of affordable modular units as well that's kind of come out, been announced in the same sort of period, I think. All very lovely colours, which I think makes you rack. Do you know, I mean, gosh, I've been so...
These guys.
Yeah, look at these. And these are kind of, the chromatic modules. These look really, really, really good.
I like that. They've all got names. I don't know. The only one I don't know. So we've got Hysteria. I don't know what eudaimonia is. That's a word I don't recognise. Nostalgia, obviously. Ataxia, not quite sure what that is, if that is a word. Dystopia and Utopia. I like that. Yeah. I like the kind of themed.
Yeah.
That looks kind of fun.
And this is, so, I mean, they had like the White Lines modules before, didn't they? So I'm not sure if these are a replacement for that line. But I think they're all reasonably affordable, aren't they? I think they're all under €100 each module.
Let me see. So 79 to 99, I think it says here.
Yeah. So I suppose you could put together a pretty cool rack using just these. And I don't know, maybe partly it's to do with the colours of it, but I'm really being drawn to this. I mean, famously, well, infamously, I'm really nervous.
You've not done the Eurorack, yeah? Do you think you might? Do you think they might turn you?
Oh God, maybe turn me. Yeah, I'm being pulled in. I think something. I think this might be the one, but I mean, I just think there is something unique about the Dreadbox sound that I don't know quite how they done it, but everything I've heard by Dreadbox just has this.
It's got a thing, hasn't it? It's got a thing.
Yeah, sure. It does sound like. I mean, it really does sound very vintagey sounding, doesn't it? If that's
there's full range as well. There's lots of stuff.
Stuff, yeah. And I think, gosh, I saw a rack with those in the video earlier, wasn't it? And then the Antiphon at the top as well. And Ooh, that looks fun.
Okay, hold on. We're getting just coming in, just hot off the press. Audio Nerd in the chat room has said ataxia is a neurological sign consisting of a lack of voluntary coordination of muscle movements that can include gait abnormalities, speech changes, and abnormalities in eye movements. I suppose that's an interesting concept. I know, Yoad. I mean, you when we came to see you, you were sort of you felt that your modular stuff was perhaps not paying its rent, as it were, in your highly expensive commercial space. So I'm supposing perhaps maybe more modules is not where your eye is drawn at the moment.
Yeah. However, when you show me 8 sine waves or 12 sine waves.
8, yeah.
8 sine wave oscillators. Obviously, the term additive synthesis comes to mind, and I love my first additive synthesizer was the Kawai K5, K5M, and after that the Casio FZ10, the sampler, which had, and the synclavier. I worked a little bit on the synclavier, not enough, but still. And you could do such amazing stuff with additive synthesis. Actually, you can do. I think that even to this day, most of speech synthesizers are made using additive synthesis. So it's a very, very sophisticated kind of way of synthesizing or creating sounds. And I used to have a Korg Delta, which used to have one, and obviously the Hammond organs and all the drawbar organs use those. What would be really, really nice would be the option, like I said, of doing a mode or something, and being able to connect a different envelope to each one of the oscillators. So then you can do stuff like marimbas and Fender Rhodes and things like that, where you can have like the tines up there very short, and then the fundamental kind of longer and things like that. So that would be really cool to have in the analog domain. Because I don't know of anything that is capable of doing such a thing within, the analog domain. So that could be cool. Yeah. I wonder whether they will offer some. I'm sure there'll be some geeks on the web that will find ways to do some mods and stuff for that. That could be really interesting.
I think the challenge with something like this is how wide the range of each oscillator is, and then how easy it is to pluck at the pitch out of it on the fader, because that's something that I find. I mean, when I was looking at the Teenage Engineering yellow thing, the range, the sweep, there's no controller or any of that, so it's almost impossible to find the right spot. So it's down to whether he gets the control law right on it. I know the 7 and 8 he's got the spec there, which it goes from 1 minute to 10 kilohertz. Over the range, over the travel of what's that? That's probably.
I like 1 minute. That's a nice frequency.
Yeah. What's that?
That's quite low.
30 mil fader. So it's going to be, it could be potentially quite challenging to dial in those sweet spots. But I suppose if you've got the CV inputs like you have, I mean, you could have some programmable stuff that would just bang it straight to where you want it to go. If you've got CV, I know, Matt, cool. You probably know of a module that will spit out a load of preset CV volts and then just go bang. So there, I'm sure there's a way, isn't there? We can.
The new polyend preset would probably do that.
Yeah, well, and also I suppose the Ableton Live CV tools would do it as well. You just have a bunch of output, but you would need 8 CV kind of capable outputs. So I suppose that would be the only caveat.
Yeah, Mark of the Unicorn, 2408, or one of those.
Yeah, just a bit excessive for €165 DIY kit, but yeah, I suppose you could do that. But yes, that would work too. Something with a lot of outputs. But yeah, we like the Dreadbox stuff. Like I say, I've got the Nicks here, and I'm going to be reviewing that. And from what I've enjoyed playing with it so far, it really has some interesting. I think that some of the things that I was worried about before was that the ranges on the mods was not slow enough and not fast enough, and I think they fixed that. And then
definitely
the filter routing, all of the sort of filter routing, which was really a bit impenetrable in the Nicks, is a lot more straightforward, and it kind of seems to make more sense. And
is that one stereo, Nick?
No, it's not stereo. Unfortunately, I think the regular, unless there's maybe a stereo output that I haven't figured out.
Yeah.
I mean the Verb in it. I think previously it was Tom Erb that provided the.
It was a Splash. It was the Crazy Tube Circuit Splash.
Ah, sorry, I beg your pardon.
In the Mark 1, and I think this now is a new algorithm. I'm not sure if it's from them but it's a different reverb algorithm.
Jolly good.
So again, the Antiphon, this is mono as well. So anything for me that involves reverbs and lots of ambient voicing, if you like, stereo for me is always essential. But
I don't know whether or not you can stereoize it. It doesn't look like it. You might be able to split it out with the high pass. I don't know. I mean, most regular reverbs, spring reverbs are usually, cheap ones like that, rather than an EMT or something, are generally mono, I believe.
Mono, yeah.
Dreadbox are like a mono company, don't virtually everything they do.
Yeah, I know what you mean.
Yeah,
yeah, there is a mononess to them. Okay, right. Let's actually, we should probably just quickly bring in our friends at iZotope because we got the competition as well.
Presenting Neutron 3, the modern way to mix. Bring your workflow into the 21st century with 8 modern mixing tools, all at your fingertips in one mothership plugin. Starting a mix can take a while, but with the all-new Mix Assistant, Neutron can listen to your audio and quickly suggest a custom starting point for an individual track, or set levels for your entire mix. Shape sounds like never before with the new Sculptor module. Match audio to a target sonic profile and instantly sculpt it to sound more like itself or like something else completely. Reach out and touch your audio with Neutron's immersive controls and visualizations. Neutron 3 comes equipped with Visual Mixer, a tool to help you effortlessly manipulate the landscape of your mix. Neutron 3, the modern way to mix.
And of course, you can download a demo as in all of their plugins. I think it operates for 10 days. If you go to iZotope.com, we have a competition. We're looking for the hashtag ProMixing and the hashtag Neutron3 to @Sonicstate and @iZotope Inc. That's a Twitter competition, so just pop a tweet out with the hashtag ProMixing, one word, and the hashtag Neutron3 to @Sonicstate and @iZotope Inc. And you could win a copy of the Neutron 3 Advanced, which is a little bit more swanky. In fact, we have a winner from last show. This is a chap called Martin Peters, who is at Atorx. So you were picked by the supercomputer, well, the random number generator, frankly, and then a good bit of manual counting up a list, but you can't beat a bit of that's a slight analog aspect to the way that we pick the winners. So Martin Peters, if you want to get in touch and if you want to enter the competition, just carry on. So let's see. I think we should probably. I don't know whether to go for Reason 11 Rack has been sitting there for a very long time. I think we should probably give it a bit of air, just because it's out now.
Anyone who makes music will tell you there's no one set path. There's no right answers.
Okay. Maybe there are
right answers.
There's no right answers. Well, we'll leave that on that
right.
cliffhanger. Basically, this is the news that Reason has 11 has dropped. It's actually just shipping. I think they announced it a while back, and it sort of sat on the topic list, but it never quite it got usurped. So this time we're going to talk about it. The interesting stuff about Reason 11 is, probably the biggest news, other than the 6 new devices, is the fact that the rack extensions, or the Reason rack, can now operate as a VST3, and you can have it within your DAW environment, which for many is the sort of thing that was missing.
Indeed.
So, and because it was a very, a Reason has always been a kind of closed environment. The rack extension went a long way to sort of changing that, because it allowed developers to move. I know Dave Spears, they did something. The GeForce did. I think they did an Neutron, didn't they? And didn't they do a filter as well? But now you can get that. So this is kind of quite a big deal. I'm not a Reason user, so I can't really comment too much. But I noticed, Yoad, you had a positive utterance there. So this is quite a big deal for them. But they do have to do something, because when you're closed, off like this, then you have to show new features, I suppose.
Yeah, I was always tempted with Reason since it came out, because it looked so cool and everything. But just the thought of moving to another DAW, plus when it came out, there was not really. It was kind of a Groovebox, or what you call it, tracker, more than a DAW. And these days you can record audio and everything. I just noticed that they also mentioned that you can now mute individual notes on the matrix editor, on the key editor, which is kind of, which only shows that the actual program itself is not that advanced in terms of MIDI and probably audio editing. But now, when it's available, or when it will be available as VST or audio units, that'll be amazing, because they have some really wicked noises and sequencers and loopers and stuff like that. And just I used it for a while, using Rewire and all that, and it was just always a nightmare. So so now I welcome this this new release very much. I think I'm gonna definitely get it and start using it. And also, it's very mature. So they've been going on for like 15 years or something. So just imagine the amount of presets and things and just that you can get just right out of the box. It's mind blowing. I've definitely got to get that.
Yeah, I mean, it is. I mean, Gareth, because Rewire was sort of invented to get around, circumvent the fact that it didn't play within others. So, but of course, when you save your DAW document, you don't save all the presets. Whereas now, this way, it's going to mean it will.
I mean, a lot of people are saying, why wasn't this done earlier? And but I mean, now it's done. Brilliant. And I mean, it does actually represent a really good value, value for money if you're thinking about it as a plugin into your existing workflow. And I mean, it absolutely was the kind of the drawback. I mean, Reason, was it probably Reason quite a while back when they introduced Record as a separate piece of software that you could run in tandem and then to be able to bring your audio tracks in. But for me, the thing that always let it down, for me, I know loads of people think it's brilliant, but I never really got on that well with the sequencer side of things, and I always thought that was a shame because it sounded so good. And as Yoad says, it is a very mature piece of software, and you get a massive amount of stuff. So now. I'm not entirely sure what the difference between the suite so €359 for the regular Reason 11 and 549 for the suite. So I'm not sure exactly what extra comes in the suite. I guess it's probably more
rack extensions, but the thing is,
rack extensions, right?
That makes it that makes it quite a lot of money for a bunch of plugins. I mean, because if you bear in mind, you buy Logic for 250 quid and all that, so it's competing.
Well, less than 150. Yeah, and that does come with an enormous amount of stuff. But because of this sort of the legacy of it, I think it's really interesting. I'd be really curious to see how easy it is to move projects across that were started in Reason. I mean, is there any sequencer side of it in the AU, or does it just literally act as the rack, as a so all the sequencing, all the MIDI sequencing?
I think you would get all your step sequencers and loopers and all that with it. Yeah.
Ooh, and a great thing with Reason, it's really good fun patching around, flipping the rack around and then sort of, being able to sort of patch in ways, and that's something that DAWs typically have always been quite poor at. So this idea of being able to bring it into your existing workflow, I think it's a really smart move.
Funny, isn't it? I mean, even after all these years, just the fact that the Patchchords have gravity and is still a USP. It's kind of
it is.
Whereas we've got Bitwig and all those things that have got, but they don't have jiggly Patchchords. Yeah. I know, Matt. Is this something that I know if you are? I mean, do you have much demand for Reason in your coursework? And do people come in using it? And yeah.
A lot of people come in using all sorts, Cubase, Fruity Loops, and Reason as well. And we support them in the use of that. Essentially, they all want to make music in their own way and create their own voices, if you like, as a producer. So we support them in any software that they want to use in any way at all. But obviously we try to get people using things more like Pro Tools, because Pro Tools is still in any studio that you walk into around the world as its main DAW, I think it's fair to say. And Logic being a good all-rounder and Ableton's your main kind of jumping between the studio and the stage. So we do focus on those three pieces of software, but now this has come out and Reason now works as a kind of standalone plugin within any of those DAWs, enables any student or anyone who started out working with Reason to jump into another DAW and start integrating a whole new DAW in with a practice that they're already used to using, which is Reason. I mean, I've got Reason, I've got it installed. I think you have to upgrade, don't you, just to get the plugin version. I don't think you can use an old version as a plugin.
It's an 11, so yeah, it probably is. In the chat room, there's been a couple of comments saying there aren't any sequencers in the plugin version, but I don't know if that's gospel or not. I mean, it's from Failed Muso, so he's usually the voice, and he's he should. I think, yeah, he's a reasoned guy, so I think he probably would know.
Well, I mean, for what you're getting though, I love the drum machine still inside of here. The Kong Drum Designer, when that came out in Reason, I was like, yeah, that's great. The kind of Space Echo emulation, the distortion units, the pitch shifters. There's this really kind of old school sounding lo-fi tape warbler plugin in there, and then of course, as we've mentioned, you've got the wobbly cables when you spin it round.
Absolutely.
And it becomes modular in itself, in that you can split signals and repatch signals and create weird feedback loops and that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
So yeah, great stuff. Yeah. And they've been around a while, these guys. They've been hats off to them. You know, they've built their own kind of ecosystem in a way. And I guess that's why they haven't done this earlier, is because they've developed their own sort of standard of plugins and way of working. Then they opened it up to developers to develop the kind of racks, the additional plugins and that kind of thing. And now that works as an ecosystem. You open that up to work inside a DAW, and it's just going to allow them to sustain their kind of business model, if you like.
Yeah, well, I do. I mean, I do hope so, because I mean, they've been, like I say, been around for such a long time. So yeah.
One of the great things with Reason, though, is how efficient it was, or it is, in terms of those plugins. Gosh, like like things like really well optimized. So I'd be really curious to see if that optimization carries across into into the DAW, and just how much overhead the actual the plugin version will,
Yeah, well, that's a fair point. Yeah, I mean, I don't know the answer to that, but yeah. Okay, well, I don't want to dwell on it too long, because we've also got this massive synth that has turned up. So this is the GS Music Zeus, which is currently, this isn't the 12, but this is a prototype. This is 12 voice analog, 3 oscillator, 3 LFO, 3 ADSR, I believe, 2 VCOs, 2 sub oscillators, 4 pulse filter, 3 LFOs, 2 ADSR, a prototype. No pricing info available yet. And this is just I hesitate to say it. It's a rather pedestrian walk through some rather unimpressive presets. So I'm sure all of that will change. But one thing it did bring out to me is that you can't afford to let this kind of stuff go out when there's so much competition. It has to sound impressive. This is not the demo I would have said yes to. But we don't know how much it's going to be. I mean, I'm hoping it's going to be an affordable thing. I don't know if I did do some research on it to try and find out if there's any more stuff. But 12 voice multi-timbral it's going to be as well. Analog poly. You can't say no to that sort of stuff. I know, it's sort of it's similar, apart from the it's got a similarity to like Voyager or Matrix Brute with the little flip. But we were talking previous to the show, weren't we, that since Hydrasynth came out, which is the new digital synth on the block, it's sort of Analogue is almost feeling a bit pedestrian, and it's no fault, it's not the Zeus. I mean, I'm sure the Zeus is going to be fantastic and sound great, but it's quite interesting how that seems to have pushed the bar, the goalpost, to the kind of parameters outside of what we've ordinarily expected. And I'm, like I said, I was playing this to Lee Kemp came over this morning to borrow a synth because he's going to be up at Synthfest, which we will be there at the weekend. Do come up and say hi. Myself, Gaz, and Andy will be there. And I just sort of played him a little, so check the Hydrasynth out, and it was even coming back to it again and just going, oh my goodness, all of that good stuff. It really does make it, it's quite unfortunate, the timing in some ways.
Well, I hope it's. I can't wait to hear better demos or to find out what the capabilities are. There's something about every synth or every guitar, or every musical instrument for that matter, that it either captures you or not, and it's regardless completely. The specs are kind of irrelevant almost. The fact that it has 2 oscillators or 3 or sub oscillators or not. If you play it and you get like, wow, I want this, then this is basically, that's the only thing that matters. And the fact that it's multi-timbral is kind of cool in a way, because it's been so long since I've plugged kind of used more than one MIDI channel, to put it simple. playing like bass and then another thing on an analog synth, I usually just I play one. You've been to the studio.
One MIDI channel for everything, yeah.
One MIDI channel for everything. So when I hit the keyboard, which is either there or here, everything plays together, and then I choose what I want to use and how to mix them together and to create layers and things like that. It's been so long since I've actually used multi-timbral outside the computer. It will be nice to get back to that without having to do any patching and stuff, by just connecting like one MIDI cable with 8, I presume, or 12.
Yeah, I don't
MIDI
know what
channels,
we don't know yet what the...
Even 8 or 6, it doesn't matter. And then being able to do that's kind of cool. But again, it's just about the sound, and it looks the business. I just wonder how it sounds, and like I said, this demo doesn't really demonstrate it. So
I'm just looking at the
I'll
specs
keep on the
here.
lookout for that.
Yeah, there will be more, I'm sure. Anna, Matt, it's interesting. I mean, big polyset. But that was interesting what Joe was saying about multi-timbrality. It's sort of largely been superseded, hasn't it? I mean, we just don't have it. I mean, we might get a split keyboard, I suppose.
Yeah, absolutely. I've talked about this sort of thing before. In a studio with a guy that I work with quite a lot, called Knightstown. It's also on Fat Cat Records. We tend to use a Dave Smith stuff quite a lot, and the reason for that is just because he's a player. He's a true keyboard player, and he can get the most out of things like aftertouch and all of the modulation parameters, and he can truly play it. For someone like me, you put me in front of a keyboard like this, and I can play a C and a C minor, and then I move my hand up and down. So that's why I use modulars, because it makes what I do sound a lot more interesting than it is. Whereas, something like this, I totally agree with Yoad. I'm yet to really hear something that makes me gravitate and pulls me towards this. Actually, one of the reasons I got into working with modulars was mainly through polyphony. I was really interested to hear what a chord would sound like if it was made up of 3 different types of oscillators from completely different manufacturers. And when you start combining sounds like that together, and then what if you used to sequence through them, and in this kind of way that you would do with a chord monopoly as well, in that sort of sense. So for me, polyphony becomes really exciting when the voices are derived from multiple oscillators and multiple components, as opposed to perhaps just your kind of your standard ones. It depends what the price is on this one, Nick. If it's under £1,000, happy days. If it's going to be more like 2 or 3, you're right. There's competition out there already for something like this, but I hope they do well, and I hope it really talks to some people out there, and that people do buy this, because it deserves to do well.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I get that.
Yeah, I mean, has there ever been an Argentinian synth company before?
That's a very good question. I'm not sure. Well,
what I think they'll need to do to make this a success, I think, is to embrace polyphonic aftertouch. I mean, obviously the Hydra synth does that, which is a fantastic tool. But I mean, because it is a multi-timbral, then obviously that does open it up maybe to MPE and that sort of thing. And I think that again is the area that it would need to exploit, really, to do well, because I think that is, there's not a lot of things that support that in the analog realm. So that would be cool. I mean, like, I'd have loved it if the Deep-Mind was had that ability, but it's monotimbral and can't be used in such a way. So I think, because this is at prototype stage, I would really urge them to consider whatever additional expense it is, to kind of get that polyphonic aftertouch. Because I mean, you'd probably find that yourself when you were playing with the Hydra synth, that just how much alive a sound feels with that.
Well, especially when it's got 5 LFOs per voice.
Right, okay.
Because then or 5 envelopes, because then you're hitting a note and it's doing its own thing, and that note can be controlled by the aftertouch for that note, and then another one will be doing something else. I mean, it's insanely deep.
I was speaking of analog multi-timbral synths. So the Abyss, which is the Dreadbox Abyss, sadly discontinued, that had a little secret poly multi-timbral mode with a little dip switch on the back, and it would make each voice have its own analog envelope, amplitude envelope. So you could actually send it 4 different MIDI channels and have 4 monosynths so independent of each other to a degree, and that's quite fun. And like what Yoad was saying, actually, when you do feed it 4 MIDI channels and play around with that, there's some really cool stuff that you can do. I think it's so I think multi-timbral should have a little
there's
bit of a comeback,
really big problem with the analog synth control panel and and multi-timbrality, and you get the same problem. I don't know, you've got the Prophet Rev 2, and there are other synths that use the same panel where you have layer switches, and whichever layer you're on. I mean, the Summit does the same thing. It's a little clearer on the Summit, but imagine if you had 4 or 5. It's really hard to keep track of where you are. There hasn't been a kind of proper editing paradigm for editing multi-timbrality in an analog kind of GUI type of setup that works, that isn't confusing. I mean, I don't know whether you, but when I was editing with the Rev 2, I've constantly found that I was reaching for a knob and it was the wrong layer,
and it was the wrong layer. Absolutely, yeah, I know what you mean. I actually have the same problem. I know it's my shortcomings, but I have the same problem with the Matrix, even though there's clearly, different colors for the Matrix and the program change.
Yeah,
I still hit the program change by accident, and then you lose everything. It's really So things like that can be quite annoying.
Yeah, I agree, and it's a difficult problem to solve. It's a kind of modern GUI issue, which is when you're working purely digital, it's sort of a lot easier because the controls are reassigned every time, and you could move away from the classic layout. I mean, like this layout here, which is the Zeus. I'm not quite sure how that will work. I think by the look of it, P1, P2, P3, P4 look like they might be the multi-timbral part. So you've got to hit one of those, but then you really need very strong color coding, lots of very strong visual cues. The Summit does it very well because the whole thing, all of the backlights change color, so it's fairly clear. It's like, I'm in the green layer or whatever it is, the orange layer or the blue layer, and so it's easier than say the Rev 2, which is also clear but not quite clear enough. So it's an interesting problem that modern instrument designers are going to have to try and solve because it isn't quite yet.
We just got too spoiled, I think, working with computers and undos and things like that. Back in the day, everything used to be kind of touch and go. I remember mixing on flying faders and automation, like basically moving faders. When you start your mix, so you were doing your mix, working for a few hours or a day or 2 days or something like that, and then when you were starting to automate the mix, you had to do the initial pass, and if you hit the wrong thing, all the faders will zero, and you know what I mean. So things like that were kind of quite common. You had to know what you're doing, and these days we're just used to just pressing all the buttons, and then you can always undo. So maybe it's a good exercise in discipline.
Yeah, maybe. Well, I mean, I think but that sort of thing is really hard to justify these days, because I mean, there's nothing worse than than an interface that means it's very easy to lose your work, and the point is, by removing those barriers, it means that the kind of initial creative spark, or the kind of I'm following this idea that I've got in my head, you don't want all of that stuff getting in the way to remember before you've executed it and then find it's gone. It's like, so there are two ways. I mean, there's and then there's Matt, the real time, the modular thing. Here's the patch, bang, I put it down, it's gone. That's it. Now I want it to be a bass sound, so I've got to change it. There are two ways of looking at it, but it depends which way, I suppose, works best, right?
Yeah. I was just thinking, actually, are we aware of any multi-timbral synths where each part can kind of modulate another part? Do you know what I mean? Usually
they're completely separate.
Yeah,
they usually completely separate, aren't they? Yeah. I'm just thinking, that would make that would really interest me. Imagine having one part that you've programmed, you've got a particular sound, then you program a second part on a different layer, different part, and then somehow you can connect particular modulation between the two.
So you're doubling up. You're doubling up your modulation matrix effectively. Yeah, that's an interesting idea. Yeah.
Yeah, you are. Yeah, the voice allocation is still taken care of, I guess, because it's capable of running particular amounts of voices. So I don't know. I just
you will have your sequencer to play. You'll have it. You'll have to play the same part out of MIDI channel 1 and MIDI channel 2 in order for this to work, or set them both to, it. There'll be some tweaking to do.
The way I would do that, I think, with Electron Analog 4 is use the macros to control LFOs. It's not the same as what you're saying. That's very good. But you can, on the Electron, you could set up a macro that is controlling the different, and actually different rates
different parts, and then map something to the macro.
Yes.
Ah, okay. That's
one way.
Yeah. Wow, that's a bit of a kind of like, okay, but yeah, just what you want to be dealing with. But yeah, I take your point. Interesting stuff, though. I mean, like I say, we do wish them well. I mean, it's still early. I don't know when we're going to be seeing this. I mean, I'm guessing we'll probably. Maybe they're going to be. I don't know if they'll be at Synthfest. Probably not. But I guess NAMM or Super Booth. I don't know how far down the line they are with this, but it would be nice to see it. I
guess with an expensive synth for a company that I don't know has any heritage beyond this. I don't know if they do. I mean, I was looking on their website.
They made a mono synth, I think.
Oh, did they?
I think.
Okay. But I mean, that's going to be, it's a big ask, isn't it, for people to sort of lay out lots of money on a new company. I mean, it does happen. But
they made these desktop synths.
Oh, they look quite nice.
Yeah, so a couple of those, and then that. There we go. Straight in there.
Good on them. Good on them. Good luck to them. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's nice. The panel is readable, though, isn't it? I like the layout is good. I mean, it's quite classic, the layout. So, I can imagine once it's actually in front of you, and I'm assuming that the rake of that angle.
I suppose so. I mean, I suppose the thing is, what I was getting at is, with something that is DSP based, where you can have ridiculous modulation counts, coming back to a sort of fixed architecture subtractive model, sort of feels like, well, you sort of need the basic elements have to sound really compelling, or there has to be some other trickery or USP that makes you go, oh that'll do this or that or the other, and so. That's the thing that they've got to think about, I suppose, and the price point, obviously, because price point forgives almost everything. So,
and it looks like they've borrowed a little bit off the DeepMind, doesn't it? The way the voice is with the little with the 12 LED
the light,
lights.
Well, lots of a few synths
other things now,
actually. Yeah, a few synths doing that now.
Yeah.
Right. Well, I think that probably feels like a good time to call it a day. I know that we did have one topic, but I think it's getting on a bit. So I've got to get back to. It's my partner's birthday this week, so I've got some preparations to do. So I need to be because I've been away as well. I can't be in bad books. But I want to say thanks to everybody for joining. Matt, thanks for joining us. I hope your new place gets sorted out and you're in your studio soon. You get maybe a holiday. There you go. Don't buy a synth. Buy a holiday, mate.
Well, as I say, I'm going to New York, Audio Engineering Society in a couple of weeks. And the new place that I'm moving into, the studio, it's actually a converted church. So it's a big old space. It's a bit echoey, so I've got to sort that out. But I'm going to kick off all my live streaming and all the YouTube stuff I've been doing because I've just not had time to do that with moving, obviously, and things in boxes. So in a couple of weeks, I'll be doing a lot more streaming, a lot more stuff on there for you if people want to check that out.
Excellent. And they can find that on the YouTube channel, your YouTube channel. So, oops, wrong button. That's the button I was on. Well, thank you, Matt. And also, Yoad Nebo, thank you very much for joining us. Do stay tuned for the piece that we filmed with Yoad. We've got so much stuff to backed up now, but it's good to have it all in the can. It's not time dependent, but yes. Yoad, of course. Are you back on the mix today, or are you done for the day?
Yeah, no, I still have a few things to do, and then I'm going for Point Blank 25th anniversary party, which will be nice.
That sounds fun. Excellent. Canapes on us, as it were. I hope the snacks are good. That's all I can say. Anyway, thanks again for joining us, and also Mr. Gaz Williams. Thank you for joining us too. We're going to see you, of course. bright and early Saturday morning for a trip up to Sheffield.
Sheffield, yes. So Synthfest. So don't forget, everyone who is in the UK and can get to Sheffield. Which one is this? Is number 4 now, Synthfest, isn't it?
I think so. Yeah.
And is gone from strength to strength, and is a really good fun event. If you are on the kind of on the fence about coming, just come, because it really will be fun.
It's a great city, Sheffield, as well. Yeah.
Yeah, and there are going to be some new things there to see as well. So
absolutely. Well,
Tom will be there with the Colossus
and the Colossus. Yeah, Colossus.
Yeah, the Udo is the Super 6 is in a much more developed state now, so that's going to be there to see. And yeah, gosh, definitely come if you can, because it really is. Yeah, it really is. It's turning into one of Britain's best events in this kind of thing.
Absolutely.
But I'm gonna have to go, because I'm gonna have to go and prod my client out of his slumber and get back to work, because we've got loads.
Well, we'll flip back to the 4-way action and we'll say goodbye, everybody. Thank you very much for watching. That was Sonic Talk episode 591, and we will see you all next time. Bye bye now.